JFK and civil rights. JFK has some problems with civil rights. For one, he really needed African American support in the election of 1960. So he promised to fight segregation when he was campaigning for president. But once he reaches office, the reality is that he does not want to alienate, to upset, to anger a large, significant portion of his party, the Democratic Party, and those were Southern Democrats who were opposed to civil rights changes, who were opposed to getting rid of segregation. So he's going to move a little bit more slowly than some people would like. He's going to opt to use executive leadership instead of congressional action. He's not going to push Congress to pass new bills and laws. Instead, he's going to do everything he can as chief executive. For example, he puts his brother, Robert Kennedy, in charge of the Justice Department by naming him Attorney General. And he tells his brother to keep fighting for black voting rights. Bobby Kennedy is going to meet and work with civil rights leaders like Dr. King and the SCLC, as well as SNCC. And as a result of Robert Kennedy's efforts in the Justice Department, there is a major increase in the number of voting rights court cases that happened in Kennedy's presidency. However, there's still no protection for volunteers, those people that are trying to get African Americans registered to vote and are targets of harassment. JFK also has his vice president, Lyndon Johnson, head up a presidential commission on equal employment opportunities. And what this commission does is get the defense industries and other companies taking government contracts to increase the number of African Americans that they're hiring. It's a nice gesture, but it does not lead to significant change. African American employment grows, but it only grows as fast as everyone else. In other words, that unemployment gap between white workers and black workers is not closing as a result of this or other efforts. As chief executive, Kennedy also appoints a number of African Americans to important positions in the government. Robert Weaver is an example. He's put in charge of federal housing. And Thurgood Marshall, the lawyer from the Brown versus Board of Education case, is named to the U.S. Circuit Court. This is kind of a step along the way to becoming a Supreme Court judge. But civil rights leaders are frustrated with the lack of progress by Kennedy's administration on civil rights. So in May of 1961, that's when CORE sponsors those freedom rides. They wanted to test the Supreme Court's decision that outlawing segregation in interstate buses. The Supreme Court had said that segregation in interstate buses and bus depots was unconstitutional. CORE wants to make sure that law is being followed now, or that ruling is being followed. Those freedom riders are attacked by a mob in Birmingham, Alabama, and the government has to send federal marshals down to protect the riders. This looked really bad for JFK's administration. So he has the ICC issue an order enforcing the Supreme Court ban. And as a result of the freedom rides, Kennedy works more closely with civil rights leaders. For example, he uses legal pressure from the Justice Department as well as U.S. Marshals and federal troops to defeat Mississippi Governor Ross Barnett and Alabama Governor George Wallace as they tried to stop the integration of Ole Miss and the University of Alabama. Here we see James Meredith, who was the first African American student to attend the University of Mississippi. And those are federal marshals. Those are federal marshals walking with him. For information on the March on Washington, go ahead and read page 869 to 870, the section I Have a Dream.